We'll have Mr. Eric Heller, then followed by Ms. Susan Shapiro, and then Mr. Al Vittorio. Thank you.
My name is Eric Heller, and I'm president of the African American Men of Westchester, a group of accomplished men of African American descent who are corporate leaders, doctors, judges, public figures, and most importantly, are health conscious and family oriented. The U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission has exhaustively studied plant operations at Indian Point, awarding the plant its highest safety rating, green, numerous times over the past decade, and NRC staff recommended license renewal. The owner, Entergy, invested more than $1 billion in upgrades, hardened communications, and strengthened the security, making the site a world-class facility. We strongly believe that Indian Point continued operation is imperative to reducing reliance on fossil fuel generation, which are unequally located in environmental just areas. If Indian Point shuts down, there will be significant pressure to replace this carbon-free facility with power from fossil fuel plants, the majority of which are located in African American and other minority communities in the New York metropolitan area. In fact, studies commissioned by the New York City Department of Environmental Protection found that Indian Point's closure would cause carbon emissions to increase by more than 15% and noxious oxide emissions to increase by 8% in both the city and state. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection reports that air pollution in New York City is a significant environmental threat, which contributes to an estimated 6% in annual deaths. The New York City Comptroller added that the cost to treat asthma has increased in recent years, eclipsing $1.4 billion annually and impacting minority communities most. Understanding the absence of Indian Point threatens the health and welfare of vulnerable populations, particularly in the minority community, we oppose political objections designed to undermine sound energy policy. As such, it's important that the NRC to continue its transparent and effective efforts to convey to the public that their rigorous inspection process has its own reputation of being the gold standard for nuclear regulatory worldwide, and that Indian Point has completed the review process and has earned the highest safety rating, affirming what we already know: Indian Point is safe, secure, and should operate another 20 years or more. Thank you.
We'll have Ms. Shapiro, followed by Mr. Al Vittorio, and then Paul Blank. Mr. Paul Blank.
As I'm sure you're well aware, fire is the #1 risk to nuclear plants, nuclear reactors. Here at Indian Point, it was our 3rd transformer fire since 2007. In 2009, the NRC said there was 198 of the 275 fire zones lacked automatic fire suppression. I want to know, how has that been repaired or recovered for fire protection? Our community is at risk. We're nervous when we see this. When we see a fire, when we hear the sirens going off, we don't have any confidence that Entergy can run this plant safely. The Entergy, and I'm asking you a question, do we need an act of Congress to make the NRC uphold the Atomic Energy Act? It took an act of Congress to get us sirens. We didn't even have sirens until Congress demanded it. And then it took 4 years for Entergy to do it because of the briny atmosphere here. Now we have transformers that are blowing up, and you don't know why. Entergy says we don't know why. We don't know how to fix it. How can we trust they can run a nuclear plant when they can't manage transformers and sirens? So we need an act of Congress to make you do your job. Secondly, I would like to ask you to give us an accounting. I'd like an audit of how much money the NRC spent to fight New York State's request to have, and the ASLB's request to not include aging transformer management in the relicensing proceeding. I'd also like to know how much money you spent fighting and litigating against us, our request and our demand that you fix the defective fire wrap at Indian Point, just so that we don't have 24 minutes between us and a meltdown. How much money have you spent on that when it would cost $500,000 to fix? We're sick and tired since 2007 that's been going on. You don't care about the public safety. And with regard to this question of, with two other issues on monitoring, I read the 2012 monitoring report, and I read this report, the recent report now. And there's defective monitoring going on. In 2012, for many months, there was no monitoring at all. This year, it seems there's still that problem. When are you going to fix the monitoring? And we want it publicly available 24/7, real-time point source monitoring. And we also want to know how much CO2 and radioactive CO2 and methane is being released from the plant every day. It's a fallacy that nuclear is carbon-free. It produces carbon. It makes new carbon that never existed on the planet. Every single day, it operates in all through the days of the spent fuel. And last year I asked a question, I'm still waiting for an answer. I FOIA'd it, and I haven't gotten the answer. They're playing games with me. How much hydrogen fuel is there in the pools and in the point? We need to know that. We have a right to know that. There's no security information. Why we can't know that? I'd like an answer tonight. I'm sure you know it. I'm sure one of the Entergy people here know it. And I really request once again that Entergy is here to answer our questions. The other question is, how many hot shutdowns have there been since Entergy took ownership of this plant? Every time there's a hot shutdown, read the public, there's a greater increase in radiation exposure. Women and children are much more susceptible to radiation. Women 2 times, children 7 times. We would like to know.
Again, you're welcome to clap back. Of course, not noisy. While somebody's speaking, I would ask that you not. There we go. Okay. While somebody's speaking, you're welcome to clap as much as you want afterwards. You know, why not? But while someone is speaking, I ask you please don't interject anything that would interfere with the person or interfere with their train of thought. Be respectful to each other. That's all. Okay.
Do you have the answer?
I do not have a specific answer on the high burn-up question. I know you have provided those FOIA requests, and I think the struggle that, I think the balance that we try to maintain and have tried to maintain and have been moved on over the last 15 years since the 9/11 terrorist attacks is the balance between protecting information that would be advantageous to somebody who might have ill intent toward any of our facilities and our commitment to openness to the public.
All right, I'm sorry. No,
So that is a balance that we try to strike. I understand you have provided FOIA requests. That's getting it into the right hands in the agency to make those decisions. But I don't, unfortunately, have an answer for you here tonight.
But again, I recognize many very strong opinions about what we're saying, what others in the United States are saying. You're welcome to use your 3 minutes as you wish. But while others are speaking, I ask you please show them respect, whether it be the NRC or fellow members of the audience. You're welcome to hold up signs while they're speaking, but please do not vocalize your dissent while they're at the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Mr. Liberatore, followed by Mr. Paul Blanche, and then Mr. Michael Lee. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Al Liberatore. I'm a business agent for Teamsters Local 456. I represent highly skilled and trained nuclear security officers at Indian Point. Teamsters Local 456 security officers are responsible for the safety and security of the Indian Point Energy Center. We have the experience and know-how that is necessary to ensure the Indian Point maintains its current record of safe operations. We are proud of the job we do, and we are proud of the plant and its safety record. The NRC has given Indian Point the highest safety rating in the last 5 years. The swift response to the transformer malfunction only reaffirms our skills and ability to handle any and all contingency plans. The Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense coordinate with the NRC, New York State Office of Emergency Management, and regional government authorities on a daily basis to ensure that the public safety is the top priority for Indian Point and the surrounding areas. Measures are in place to ensure alerts go out rapidly should the need arise. Shutting down Indian Point would have a catastrophic impact on the area economy. Indian Point is also a net economic driver in the region, supporting thousands of well-paying jobs across Westchester County and the cleanest, most inexpensive way to produce energy. Residents of New York State would be faced with a considerable rise in electric bills, and closing the site means municipalities, schools, and services that depend on the tax revenue from Indian Point would be cut drastically and cause possible layoffs in those communities. Businesses would be forced to leave the area, families could lose their homes, and the entire region would suffer. Indian Point's continued operation is necessary for our economy. Thank you.
Again, we'll have Mr. Blanche, followed by Mr. Lee, and then followed by Mr. Joe Goble. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to try to stay at 3 minutes, and I've shortened up my speech, but it's going to be continued by some supporters. My name is Paul Blanche. I reside in West Hartford, Connecticut. I'm a nuclear expert, and all my work is pro bono. My ultimate objective is nuclear safety. Tonight I'm presenting 2 concerns related to vital Indian Point issues. The first issue relates to the Indian Point 42-inch gas line in close proximity to the vital structures of Indian Point. The second issue is my opinion related to the recent transformer failure and a new significant safety issue revealed in the press on vital power sources. I was an expert witness for the state of New York for the transformer aging management program, and I am a transformer expert. On January 28th, we had a teleconference with the NRC on my petition for the gas line. The NRC would not provide any comments responses to our concern and refused to respond to my questions proposed in my letter of May 2nd and provided inaccurate, false data in its letter to me dated April 28th. This is not only false data, but it's inaccurate data. It misquotes references cited by the NRC. Some of the significant issues that I am going to bring up on the pipeline is, in its analysis obtained under a FOIA field, the NRC knowingly manipulated probability data in order to convince the public that this was a low-risk event. The NRC cited data from references that were not contained within these references. The final result was that the NRC was able to reduce the probability of a gas line explosion by a factor of more than 10,000. I repeat that, 10,000. Thus making the risk acceptable by NRC regulations. The NRC used a computer program used to calculate the gas release rate and the total gas blast area that is prohibited, absolutely prohibited by the EPA from using this configuration. The Department of Energy, we now have a letter from the NRC stating the pipeline isolation valves are constructed under the criteria developed by the US DOT. Therefore, the petitioner's concerns are invalid. DOT hasn't a clue for testing redundancy for nuclear power operations. The NRC is essentially given the responsibility to the Department of Energy or Department of Transportation for the overall safety of nuclear power plants. This is the NRC's exclusive right, and they have no business delegating reactor safety to the Department of Energy that has one inspector per 5,000 miles.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, sorry, apologies.
I want to note that Mr. Blanch got about a page and a half into an 8-page statement that he has provided to us, and we are bringing that back. And there are a number of things that you asserted in there that I will take back and refer to our Office of Inspector General, because they do make assertions of wrongdoing by the staff. I would note the valves in the pipeline will be regulated by DOT. We don't regulate valves in gas pipelines. Our concern is whether that pipeline and what safety impact that would have on Indian Point. There have been a couple of comments about the distance from that pipeline and where it's proposed to go relative to structures and components at Indian Point. The analysis of the staff looked at the location of that pipeline, and there have been a couple of comments that use the term vital components. And in our regulation, vital components has a particular meaning, and it relates to those components that are used for the safe shutdown of the facility in the event of in this case, the gas pipeline explosion. And in the staff's examination of the location for the pipeline, the distance from the pipeline, the closest point from the proposed location of the 42-inch pipeline to what's called the security owner controlled area, or the outer fence line of the Indian Point nuclear power plant, is 1,580 feet. And all of the vital components that go into the staff's analysis are inside the fence line. There are concerns that Mr. Blanch and others have raised about other components that are outside that fence line. Mr. Blanch has provided a petition, as he indicated, to the NRC. And that petition is still ongoing. There's another meeting to come for Mr. Blanch to provide additional information. Understand the previous meeting that he had was not particularly satisfying to him. We'll hope we'll do better in the next go around.
And we want a local meeting to discuss this.
Yeah, so for the recording, Mr. Blanch's comment is that we want a local meeting, and the normal process in the petition review board, we would like to have our technical experts readily available to engage in that meeting. So it would typically be a meeting that would be centered in our headquarters office, but we understand that the request has been made for a local meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I apologize if you're not going to meet Michael, you're clearly Michelle. So I apologize.
My parents couldn't spell.
Please.
Let me just ask, I'm going to read from text and testimony from the ASLB hearings. Would you like the original copy to look at?
I expect we have a copy.
Okay, well, I want to read along. These are just the transcripts on the transformer fire question, which of course is decided to be no big deal. Because regular maintenance picks up everything. I really want to begin here with getting to the crux of the issue. And let me read from a quote from former Prime Minister of Japan, Nato Kan, who was Prime Minister during the Fukushima crisis. And he came and spoke to us in New York City twice. This is the first time he spoke. And he was describing the point in the Fukushima reactor accident when he brought his experts around him and asked them, what's the worst case scenario? Quote, and you remember that Fukushima was 150 miles from Tokyo. 50 million people, almost half the entire nation of Japan, abandoned homes, leave workplace, schools, hospitals, all evacuated. I realized Japan would not be able to function as a nation for a very long period of time. They couldn't minimize spread before a situation so grave. Now, bear in mind that 80% of the radiation from Fukushima flew out to sea, to the Pacific Ocean. Indian Point is not near the sea. An accident at Indian Point would devastate the New York metropolitan region. And here, gentlemen and any ladies who might be with the NRC today, is my question to you, because I believe you are misleading the people of New York and the American public when you state that you have determined there is safety and reasonable insurance. Because reasonable insurance means different things to you than it would mean to any normal member of the public. You say that the risk of a major accident is low risk. What you call high consequence events are low risk, so that they can be discounted. And yet, when you go and talk to a public, I've never once heard any member of the NRC emphasize the fact that the nuclear industry will not self-insure, that under the Price-Anderson Act of 1957, half a century ago, before nuclear power was supposed to be proven so safe, that neither the insurance industry, the independent arbiter of risk, nor the nuclear industry, which knows the reality of its own safety, will insure for risk. That is based on the public. And I think that is a pretty relevant fact, and you should bring it up, I think, every time you give a reasonable assurance of safety. Thank you very much.
Stipulate the point on Price-Anderson. On the high consequence, low risk, this is a central point for the NRC in the Fukushima lessons learned. And the earthquake and the tsunami that followed in Japan devastated an area of several hundred miles of coastline, as much as 3 to 7 miles inland from the tsunami effects. There were, in Japan, in those weeks that followed, 4.5 million people without electricity, 1.5 million people without water. 15 to 25,000 was the numbers that were being thrown around with the dead or missing. There were hundreds of thousands of people who were out of their homes before there was a problem at Fukushima. And the lesson for me from that was that the nuclear industry and the nuclear power plants have to have the capacity to prevent core damage for as long as it takes for the civil society to recover from an event of that catastrophic magnitude. And that is at the heart of the actions that were ordered by the Commission in 2012 that have been completed for Indian Point Unit 3 in their last outage and will be completed for Indian Point Unit 2 in their next outage, to provide the capability for natural disasters of unforeseen magnitude that would impact the cooling supplies and the electric supplies to the plant, such that they get into what we call a long-term station blackout. So the plant has the capability now to cope for the first 24 hours using the installed equipment. They have in a building on the site today, which is out there this morning looking at them. They have portable generators, portable pumps, miles of cabling, hosing, all the things that the Japanese operators were struggling to do. They knew what they needed to do. They didn't have the resources, they didn't have the procedures, they didn't have the capability to put it in place in the time that they had available at Fukushima Daiichi. Fukushima Daini, which is about 10 miles down the coast from Fukushima Daiichi, had the same earthquake and tsunami, and there the operators were successful without the pre-staging. So that's a key part of the Fukushima lessons learned. And then the third piece of it is an industry centers. There's a center in Memphis, Tennessee, and a center in Phoenix, Arizona. And the industry is set up, the reason those are there is those are FedEx hubs, and they can get that equipment to any nuclear power plant in the country within 24 hours to ensure its sustainable ability to maintain the reactor, prevent the reactor from being damaged, prevent the spent fuel from being damaged in unspecified scenarios of natural disasters without the support of the civil society. So I appreciate the perspective on the high consequence, low risk, high consequence, low probability events. That was a key focus of our efforts in the lessons learned from Fukushima.
This will give you some indication. So when I hold this up, that means you have 2 minutes. If you see me take down the yellow sign, that means I'm about to hold up the red one. So start thinking about wrapping up your remarks. Also, I thought about holding up the signs upside down. I apologize. Mr. Goebel, please. We'll be followed by Mr. Arnold Piacentini, and then Ms. Margot Shepard.
Thank you. My name is Joe Goebel. I've worked at Union Point for 35 years, and the comments I make tonight on my own and not anyway endorsed or not endorsed by entity. In any case, I want to talk about the relicense of Indian Point and the water quality certification by the state of New York. You consider Governor Cuomo is opposed to relicensing Indian Point. When asked the question, he's influenced the DEC in a manner similar to the Moreland Commission. I submit that the proposal by the DEC to build cooling towers at Indian Point and take outages between May and August has nothing to do with protecting fish. You see, the governor has no jurisdiction over Indian Point, and the relicense, but if you tell the DEC to come up with some fake requirement that makes Indian Point a financial loss to operate, and enforcing agency to shut it down. Case in point, would you want an ice cream stand in New York State if they told you you couldn't sell ice cream between May and August? Not likely. Here's some facts that point to politics versus fish protection. The state itself owned Indian Point and operated for nearly 25 years. And between May and August, it sucked in over 800,000 gallons a minute of Hudson River water every minute of the day. In 2000, New York State privatized the operation of the plant and sold the plant to Energy. Now, 15 years later, during the relicensing process, the state objects to the plant's operation. Does that sound very ethical to you?
Yes.
Wedge wire screens, what Energy has proposed to use to cut the fish pot and damage the fish down even further. The DEC has licensed those and allowed those to be used about 100 feet up from Indian Point as a garbage burning plant. Why not Indian Point? In 2009 and again this year, the DEC published a document called the State of Hudson River. There's no mention of Indian Point within this document, and the report states the biggest influence on fish population has been commercial fishing. And since banning commercial fishing, the fish population has begun to increase in the Hudson River. Lastly, on May 1st of last year, the federal government implemented a new capacity zone resulting in increased electrical bills. This increase is designed to lure more power plants into the Hudson Valley, by guaranteeing them increased profits. The initial power generation is needed to fill a gap in backup capacity in New York City, which is otherwise at risk for blackouts during heat waves. Are most heat waves likely to occur between May and August? So at NRC, I'm actually taking another look at this requirement for a water quality certification as part of the relicensing of Indian Point, based on the validity of what the state has proposed. Thank you.
Mr. PSMT.
Is this on? Good evening. My name is Arnold Piacentini from Richmond, Mass. I hold 3 degrees in chemical engineering and work for the petrochemicals industry in several responsible and forward-looking technical and commercial positions. The operational, legal, regulatory, and controversial history of this plant is well documented. What brings me here this evening is an incredible decision by the NRC for Energy and Spectra to permit the AIM project with the intent to construct a 42-inch diameter loop of high-pressure frac gas pipeline within only 105 feet from 1 million gallons of oil product needed for critical operation of the plant. That, in addition to this, that there are other gases grouped in proximity to one another. On this property are 2 existing gas pipelines that go back to the 50s and 60s. Indian Point is 40 years old and stored on site are 40 years of radioactive spent fuel. Proposed are 2 1,000 megawatt transmission lines, both of which would intersect AIM. Electromagnetic induction can interfere with cathodic protection and further induce currents which would accelerate corrosion. In addition, AIM would intersect with the CSX rail line, which transports what are proven to be explosive rail cars and bargain shale crude or oil synthesized by mixing tar sands extract with frac gas. That Indian Point sits on 2 faults is well known. New York State officials will eventually make arrangements to shut this plant down and hopefully replace it with renewable sources. NRC's responsibility is to get us from now to that point in time without further incident. Statistics compiled by DOT's PHMSA for the 9-year, 9-month period ending September of last year show an average incident rate for gas transmission lines about 1 per week. For all pipelines, gas and liquid, distribution and transmission, that rate is 4.5 per week. These are as reported by the industry. Clearly, the pipeline industry in its current unregulated state is out of control, and DOT sees impotent to influence safety, left only to reporting. So, how can NRC contemplate taking this imaginable risk? The first principle of risk management is for one not to risk more than one can lose. Obviously, we cannot afford to lose what is at risk here. This complicated set of hazardous scenarios is not subject to a quantifiable model of statistical probabilities. It is instead one where level heads with power to influence, such as you, the outcome must make judicious decisions. Corporations with profit motive and without liability do not qualify. I ask that NRC withdraw its approval of the Spectra AIM project. Thank you.
I'm sorry. It's amazing how many intelligent, knowledgeable elected officials and residents of the New York metro area can come here year after year after year after year and have the NRC still pay no attention to them. But I am very, very proud of the people that have spoken today. So, near the city of New York, on the lovely Hudson shore, 2 leaky nuke plants make tons of waste to go in fuel pools that can't hold more. The NRC makes scary rules for health and safety. We can only hope, 'cause even though they catch on fire, the main transformers are out of scope. Please join me. NRC is a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine. NRC is a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine. So much have changed over the years. The population has really grown. We also live with terror threats and extra earthquake faults that were unknown. The NRC can change its rules, which makes relicensing a rigged event. So even though they catch on fire, the main transformers are exempt. 'Cause NRC is a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine. NRC is a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine. It's really hard to understand how fire safety can just be reduced
It's no surprise the NRC is giving Entergy another boost. And now the lawsuits are in the court, because those exemptions are unsafe for folks. But it's been dragging on and on. This whole procedure is a giant hoax. NRC is a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine. NRC is a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine, a rubber stamp machine. Thank you.